Welcome to Season 2 of Alternative Living Chats. This podcast is where I speak to like-minded people who have decided to give up on living in the standard house and found an alternative lifestyle. If you would like to be a guest, please drop me a message. All my contact details are in the podcast information. Also, please remember to leave a review as this helps other people find us. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I hope you enjoy the conversation I've had with Britt, who goes around the world house-sitting. She explains all about what she does, and also she's left information for me to put into the podcast. So if you fancy having a go at this, just follow all the links that are in the information. So sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy. And please don't forget, if you can leave us a review, it helps grow the podcast so others will also be able to enjoy listening. Thank you. For today's podcast, I have the pleasure in talking to Britt, and she's going to introduce herself now. So if you'd like to tell everybody about you.
Hi everyone, my name's Brittany. I'm from Australia. I've been house sitting for the last 5 years. I think that's why I kind of wanted to have a chat with Maxine. I started house sitting when I was living in London. I did the old Aussies living in London for 2 years. And one day I was down the park with my friend, and another friend showed up and she came with a dog. And I knew she was travelling, and I said, where'd the dog come from? She said, I'm house sitting. And we were all living in these horrible share homes, and she's in this beautiful part of London. So I sort of thought to myself, maybe I could start house sitting. And then 4 years later, I was doing it up until COVID, and then I've kind of taken a break since then, but I'm hoping to get back into it this year.
Oh, fabulous. So how did you actually go about it? What do you do to find places to house sit?
Yeah, so when I first started out, I just spoke to my friend and found out the site that she was using. And I just started applying for a whole bunch of house sits, and that was probably September, October. And I wasn't really getting any positive responses. I guess I had no references, kind of no experience to show anyone. And then I kept applying, and then I found that came to like end of October, November, I started getting approved for a few house sits. And that's when I started to discover that around holiday periods, it's a lot easier to start house sitting. So I got about 2 under my belt then, and then moved to Dublin after my 2 years. And did a few house sits then in Dublin, and then ever since then been house sitting.
Brilliant. And what countries have you been to?
House sat in Malaysia, Thailand. We did a 9-month trip to Europe. So we bought a camper van in Liverpool and drove it down through France. Did one house sit just near Bordeaux for about a month, and then another one down near Provence. And then we drove down Italy, so we started at the top of Italy and we did some around the lakes, for a few weeks, and then drove down to Rome. We did a great one in Rome. That was about 5 weeks long.
Wow.
And it was the height of summer. So it was over 30 degrees every day. And, you want to go out and see the sights, but it makes it hard when you're only there for a couple of days. I think that's what's so good about the house sitting is we could go out in the mornings, see 1 or 2 sites, and then be home by 10 or 11 and be happily inside where it's cool and not having to tramps around. So that was one of my favourite ones. And then we went across through Croatia and did a house in Montenegro for about a month, and then down to Greece. And we did another one there for about a month.
Oh, that was fabulous. So it
was a great trip.
I would say plenty of time in each place. And so you were in a camper van as well while you were going down?
Yeah. So we found that was probably like a great way to kind of not have to worry about going from back-to-back house sits, and also having a place to kind of travel and explore. We'd always kind of try and leave maybe 2 weeks between each house sit when we were doing that. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gave us a good time to really explore and see all those, because when you are house sitting, you can only really go do a day trip. So we could see a lot more, and plus we didn't have to pay for, a rail or flights or anything.
Yeah. And how did you find living in the camper van for those few months?
Oh, well, we ended up, because we flew into Liverpool and we only really had 2 options of 2 camper vans. And one, the mechanic said, definitely not. And the other one, you're probably going to laugh. It's not even quite really a camper van. It was a Citroen Berlingo.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty much just like a tradesman's van. And the man had just, I'd say very rough. It was a rough job. Had put a bed in the back. And you could configure it so you could have seats, but to sit up, your head was like touching the roof. And for us to lay flat, the doors had to be open. So it wasn't like the luxury van life that some people might imagine, but it got us from, A to B, and we had somewhere to sleep in between house sits. And, it got us all the way from Liverpool to Albania.
Wow.
And we're going from Montenegro to Albania. From Montenegro down to Greece for the next house sit. And we were halfway through Albania and it just stopped on the side of the road and never started again.
Oh, no.
So at the end of it. We planned on starting it anyway in Greece. So we sold it to a mechanic there. And, that was kind of the end of our van trip.
Yeah. So what would you say has been the, highlights of doing what you've been doing for, house sitting and finding different places?
I reckon it'd have to be the slow travel that we've had. We've got to experience, like I was explaining, like our time in Rome and also meeting some great people. When we house sat in Greece, we were there for about 6 weeks, and the couple, they said was going to come home for one weekend because they were just having 2 holidays. And we said, that's fine. And they came home and they said, on Sunday, we're going to have a Sunday lunch. We're going to have everyone come round. So we spent the whole morning in the kitchen, helping her cook and learning all these recipes. And then we got to meet the family in the afternoon. So we had a great experience with them. So I think that really experience a place more in depth and then also kind of feeling a part of a community. Because a lot of homeowners, they want to introduce you to the neighbours. They want to introduce you to their friends. They want to tell you where their favourite cafe is, their favourite bar, markets. So I think just like kind of that slow, more immersive travel has been one of the best things.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, and especially getting into their lifestyle and everything, and as you say, meeting everybody and living as you would do if you were actually permanently living in the country, because it's completely different, isn't it, than staying in a hotel or, bed and breakfast or something like that.
Definitely. You're in like a whole other part of the city. Like you're not in that like hotel zone. You're really in a community, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand that. And what would you say has been the worst experience or that you've had, if any, at all?
I think I'm very lucky. Never had any animals. I've never had to take any animals to the vet or had any issues with the homes. Probably the worst experience it was not even that bad, but we showed up to one house and it was pretty dirty. It was livable, but you wanted to clean it I'm not like super, anal about cleaning, but this is like not comfortable enough to be in. And I think ever since then, I always now do video chats with people before I accept a house if I'm not in the same area as them. So I kind of get a feel for the home. But other than that, I just feel so lucky that I've never had any big problems come up.
That's good. And so while you were travelling, have you been working at all, or are you retired or?
Yeah. So when I was in Dublin, I was working at an agency, an ad agency, and then I started a few websites on the side then. And by the time we were leaving Dublin, we wanted to keep travelling. So we kind of took those sites full time, and they're media sites that we have ads run on. So I kind of just grow those, and I have about 3 or 4 of them. So I can work remotely from anywhere. So it kind of works well, better than staying in an Airbnb. It's nice being in someone's home where they might have an office and that. So I work remotely online, so house sitting's perfect for that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's an ideal way so you can enjoy the different surroundings and carry on working as you go through, which is brilliant. Yeah. So you've said you've been to the Middle East as well, house sitting. What was that experience?
No, not to the Middle. We've only travelled through there, not house sat.
Right. Yeah. And how did you travel through there? Was it, just as a holiday, or was that again doing a long travel?
I've only been to Dubai. That's the only place I've been there.
And you went to Thailand? Did you say you'd been to Thailand? Yeah. Or was that house sitting, or was that a holiday?
Both. So when we finished up in Dublin, we moved to Chiang Mai, which is kind of like a bit of a hub for Westerners and digital nomads. So we lived there for about 3 months, and then headed back to Australia. And then we got an offer for a house sit, so went back there another time. And that was also in the north, so it was lovely weather.
Oh, brilliant. So when you were staying out there for 3 months, was that house sitting or was that?
That was just, we were living there, yeah. That was, I think, what I found is house sitting isn't really that big in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
It's only kind of big in places in Asia where there's a big expat community. So I always got another thing I kind of suggest to people if they want to go to somewhere like Tokyo or maybe a smaller city in Japan, maybe Sapporo, maybe jump on an expat Facebook group and advertise your skills there. I think that a lot of families, they settle in these places and they have their animals. They also kind of get their month holiday, so they go back home and they might, they need a house sitter those times. So house sitting is really big in Australia, the US, the UK, France, Spain. It's huge there. They're not so big in the Asian countries, but there are a lot of expats looking for people.
So that's the best way to go through. So I was say, obviously, you've been quite experienced at doing this now. So if somebody is looking to broaden their horizon and do something like this, what kind of tips would what would be the best tips to give you people?
I definitely think give it a try with friends or family. Ask them if they need a house sitter if they're heading away. I think that it's not for everyone. It might sound great, but sometimes people don't like living in other people's homes or sleeping in someone else's bed or moving and packing all the time. So I think give it a try with friends and family, and then you can kind of ask them for a reference. And another thing we did when we got started was we took a screenshot of our Airbnb reviews. So kind of any social proof that you can show to a homeowner, I think is a great way to go.
Yeah, because you've got to be able, obviously they want to be able to trust you and know that you're going to look after their home, because that's
Definitely.
why.
You're looking after their house and their animals, two of their most prized possessions.
Yeah, definitely. So do you have to have an insurance or anything like that, or has anybody ever asked for like a CRB check that we have in the UK or anything?
Is it like a background check?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. The platform that I use, they make you get a background check, right, and then they also provide insurance as well. So I know a lot of people do find house sits they look on Facebook groups and things like that, but I always suggest using a platform just so you are covered by insurance.
That's a good idea. And so obviously if anybody's interested, they can check, obviously, can they contact you to find out any more information or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have a website, it's thetroublinghousitters.com, and we kind of started it as a place, kind of like an online resume. We wanted a place to be able to put all of our house sits that we'd done and put all the places we'd been to and all the references we had. And then it kind of morphed from that to friends and family always asking us how they could get started. So we wrote a few tips and that, like I've told you, like I said before, with the Airbnb screenshots and applying it around holiday periods. Like Easter's coming up, so that's a great time as well. And on there, we now have a whole bunch of resources for anyone wanting to get started. So I can send you a link to that if if your audience is interested in having a read.
Yeah.
Or we also have a Facebook group, which is we've got about 20,000 people now in there, and that's homeowners, new house sitters, experienced house sitters. And there's just discussions and questions all day long being asked. So it's a great place to kind of come in and have a read and see kind of the other situations that other people are in and how they're kind of dealing with it. So I think that's really helped. They're both really good resources.
Yeah, they sound perfect. And as I say, I'll put the links in the information for the podcast so people can join, which will be really helpful. So what's your plans for the coming months or year? Have you got anything that you're wanting to go, anywhere you're wanting to go to or anything?
Yeah. So I'm heading to Sri Lanka at the end of March. So that's not house sitting. I'm just going for 2 weeks. I think that's another thing with the house sitting is you can't really be rigid with your plans. You kind of have to be open because you're kind of working around the homeowner's plan. So you can't really say, I want to go here for 2 weeks and hope there's going to be a house sit. Yeah. It kind of doesn't really work that way. You have to be quite flexible. But then I'm hoping to go to Mexico at the end of the year. I've just started Spanish lessons, which is much harder than I imagined was going to be. And yeah, so I know there's a lot of house sits in Mexico just because a lot of Americans have second homes down there. So a lot of them just want someone in the home. Yeah. So from what I've seen online, it seems like there's a lot. So yeah, so Sri Lanka and Mexico is what I'm hoping this year.
That sounds really exciting. And so if you're obviously looking to go to Mexico at the end of the year, when do you have to start, when do you start doing the work to find the perfect place for you to go to and that's going to fit in with you?
Yeah. So what I do, I set up alerts. So one of the sites that I use, and I've also got a video to show people how to do this, but you can set up alerts. So you can set up alert for the place for more than 3 weeks maybe. You can kind of also add in the filters of the timing and the sorts of animals. Maybe you say you only want to look after dogs or no animals. So I'll set up alerts for a certain location, and then if a house sit comes up, I'll get an email and I'll just jump on there and apply for it straight away.
Well, that sounds an excellent platform. So again, everybody can find out about that on your website.
Yeah, they can. So yeah, I also have a little post on there about all the ones I kind of recommend, because there is one website, but sometimes there also is country-specific ones. So if you're coming to Australia, there's 3 that I'd recommend looking at first, because they have a lot more on there for Australia. If you're heading into Canada, there's a great one for Canada. If you're in the UK, there's another great one for the UK. So I think that kind of is a little more country-specific. Mm-hmm. So I think that, so you can look at the big one, but there's a lot of competition on there. So that's why I always suggest that kind of have a look at the smaller ones first as well.
Yeah, and that would be ideal, especially for somebody starting out if they go into the smaller ones and
for the competition.
Yeah, and it's a cheaper way of seeing the country as well, really, because obviously you're not paying for hotels.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a lot of thing. Like a lot of people talk about travel hacking and say, like, I'm going to save money on my $1,000 flight. But I think when you travel for a couple of months, you're going to spend way more money on accommodation. So I think that the house sitting, you can really save a lot of money. You're not worrying about any bills or anything like that. And you are staying in a beautiful place rather than in a dorm room or a little Airbnb. You've got the whole place to yourself.
Yeah. And do you
save a lot of money?
Do you incur any charges when you're saying, doing a house sitting? Are you just having to pay for your own food, or do you have to pay for electricity or gas or anything like that?
I think every single house sit's different. Most of the platforms say that no money is to be exchanged. And that's why I've always never charged. Some people do charge, but I think that traveling around and doing it would make it quite hard with visas and taxes. So I've always avoided that. I have seen for some longer term house sits, they will say maybe $50 a month for electricity. But again, it's every single one. It's so big. Every single one's different. Some people are just so thankful that they don't have to put their animals in a kennel and you're going to come stay with them and look after them, that they will leave you food or they'll leave you, things. Or I've had one person, they left a little gift voucher for a local cinema because they want you to go see it.
Yeah.
And then other ones where people will say, it's this much per month. And, you can pick and choose which one you kind of want to do.
So as you say, everybody's different, and just interesting to find if you've got, if you're going to have a completely free of charge stay, or if you've got to expect some outgoings as well.
Yeah, I don't think other than signing up to the site, which is they're all around kind of that $50 to $100 mark. That's a yearly cost. And then some people will say, oh, that's like, a lot of money. But if you think about it, if you're going to pay for an Airbnb in any Western country, that's probably 2 nights one night at best now. So I think that it kind of does pay off. And after 5 years, I would say that, living costs, I've probably saved over $100,000 house sitting.
That's fantastic. And you're seeing loads of different countries and everything. And as you say, it's immersing yourself into the community, isn't it? Which makes a huge difference.
Definitely, yes.
Brilliant. So it's been fantastic finding out about this way of life and everything. And I'm sure the listeners will be really intrigued by it. So what would be the one main thing that you take away or make, let people know that's going to do this? What's your one main bit of advice?
I think my main thing is references are key. So always think about what holidays are coming up. At the moment, I'm getting emails about people wanting house sitters for Easter. Mm-hmm. People are thinking about school holidays. So they're great times to get started. So if you do want to get started, just kind of have a think what holidays are coming up, and then you'll be able to land a few house sits really easily and then start building up your references.
That's brilliant. So thanks ever so much. And as I say, all your details will be in the information for the podcast. So everybody can now start looking to see where they want to go and do some house sitting, which sounds really, really good fun.
Yeah, I hope everyone does start having a go at it.
Definitely. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you so much, Maxine.
I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast, and thank you very much for listening. Please let everybody know about the podcast so we can grow the Alternative Living Chats community. And if you would like to join me, drop me a message. And also all the details of today's guests will be in the information of this podcast. Thank you.